Hey everyone, Sycra here, and today I am streaming with my not sister wives because I don't have sister wives, but in the last stream, everyone was saying, like, oh, who's that person with Sycra? Oh, it's his sister. Oh, it's his sister wife. Oh, it's himself or something. It's not. It's Flavia, and she's a real person. And we were in the same room, so, like, anyway, and then there is Bob Meatbag, who is here. So it's the same group as last time, and we're gonna be taking questions from the audience, and Bob's gonna be drawing stuff, and Flavia's gonna be moderating and taking questions and stuff because she was really good at it last time. So, so.
So the first question is from Facebook. What I'm most interested in is environment plus creature character design. Would it be wise to focus on one topic first, so I hopefully get good at it faster?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who they do sort of a wide range of things, but they tend to be very trained in realism. So if realism is your foundation, you're very good with perspective, you're very good with just painting real life, then there's a lot of crossover in concept art between environments and land and buildings and monsters and stuff. But the stronger your own style is, the more you tend to focus on one or the other. So, and sometimes it's your preference. So for me, sure, I could do environments, but I never really liked it, so I didn't want to do it, so I made sure I would do characters and I would avoid environments. So it's really up to you, but that's sort of middle tier thing. Once you get to the higher tier, it tends to be what you're really good at is what you'll be hired as. So I don't think that you would be like a character designer also doing environments. It's like they could just hire an environment person, but I don't know, maybe things have changed. I'm not currently working in the industry, so I don't feel like I am the best person to give current advice.
Yeah, this guy had another question about these days a lot of concept environment character art seems to go for a similar popular style. Is it important to stay close to standards or styles in certain genres, or can it be a good thing to go against the flow?
The flow?
The flow, sorry.
Well, I guess both work. Again, the way I was sort of told in this subject, it's this thing of, okay, you're either a superstar artist or you're the jack of all trades, and you kind of have to choose which one you are. And the superstar artists are the ones that get hired either for their style or, well, usually, yeah, for their style, or because they're just really, really good, but I don't really know any of them who don't have a distinct style. And you have to be super, super, super good to be one of those artists. And then there's the other type, which, and those are very rare, so there's a small amount of superstar artists, and character designers tend to be much more rare. And then after you have a lot more artists who do what is popular at the time. And so right now the trend is towards very realistically painted things. Even in anime, if you've been following DeviantArt, you'll see guys like Zeranus and Sakimi-chan and Crown Prince, and a lot of artists are doing ArtGerm. A lot of artists are doing this very realistically painted, sort of stylized drawing thing, and so that's what's in right now, and so that's what people are looking for as well. Now, those guys, though, in DeviantArt, they tend to also be the superstar artists. So in terms of most of the industry positions, they tend to be more of the realistically painted things, and photo bashing and stuff is very common. 3D work is very common. So that's when that's where most of the jobs are, and you often get told to do things like your your job will be something like draw this in this style, and it's not necessarily your style, it's just a style of whatever is popular at the time, and there's a lot of that type of work out there.
Marius is in the chat. He says, "Hey."
Oh, hi Marius.
How would you use the lightning technique to draw the arms and legs with the right proportions? How would you use it in complex poses instead of just standing ones?
You really don't, or I don't. With my lightning bolt technique, I use it primarily for just either the figure is standing or maybe their arm is bent or something, but it's not that complicated. If it's complicated, I might switch to the coil technique. And for people who are unaware of what these two techniques are, real quick, the lightning bolt is where I start a figure, and for the arms and the legs, I simplify them into these lightning bolt shapes. And then I get the hands. And so yeah, I start with a head, and then I get the line for the shoulders, and then the line for where the hips are, or the angle for the shoulders and the hips, and the body's in here. And then the legs are simplified by a lightning bolt, and the arms are like this sort of shape. And it's because it's automatic straight against curves, because you get these are curves, and then you fill it in with straights. And so yeah, it's pretty okay for these poses, but then let's say you have a more dynamic pose, and let's say something's coming at you, well then it's more likely that I'll do like the coil technique, which is this, where you start with coils to describe foreshortening. When things go forward in space, you use coils. And so I do that, but I also just, I don't know, do like just stick figure things as well. And it just depends, it keeps changing now. My advice is to draw a lot, and then these things help you, but they're not absolutely essential. They're temporary things. So yeah, I guess that's my biggest advice, is to draw a lot.
Okay, so he said, I recently started animation school, and I'm worried because I don't draw as much as I did before. It feels like the school is sapping the fun out of it. I don't know if that's the right path, though.
Okay, this person started animation school, and the teachers are what's sapping life out of it?
The school is sapping the fun out of it.
Well, yeah.
He doesn't know if the school is right for him.
I don't know. Bob and I, we didn't have the greatest experience in animation school.
Yeah.
For me, what bothered me is I was someone who, and still am, someone who is largely self-taught. And so when I would learn stuff on my own, I would learn really fast. And I thought that before going to animation school, like I would learn even faster in school. And it turns out that wasn't the case. There was a lot more variety of topics, and we would have assignments due and stuff. But there were times where I wanted to really stick with one assignment much longer, and I couldn't because the class was moving forward, and other times where it was just painfully slow and boring. And so, I don't know, I felt like I was learning a lot more just from online videos and books and studying myself than I did from school. But it really depends. But even if you're in school, I would suggest that, let's say it's sucking the life out of it. Well, do you have any time to do your own stuff to just balance that out and maybe, learn on the side? if you can. I don't know. I don't know how busy your school is, but that might be a good idea.
Okay, so besides the flour sack method, do you know of any methods or advice for drawing figures where the body's twisting?
Yeah, in my next Pointy Chins episode, I'm going to be covering ribbons, and this is probably going to cover this answer. So stay tuned for the next exciting episode of Pointy Chins.
The Pixel Traveler asks, do you look at portfolios?
No.
Why not?
Well, because I'm not going to hire somebody. Oh, like...
Portfolio reviews. So
do I
like
do a portfolio review?
Of the entire portfolio.
Oh, I thought you meant, like, would I hire him? It's like, for what?
I don't know.
Being a sister wife.
I don't know.
No. I
Amira.
guess I could, but...
Amira's in the chat.
Who?
Amira.
Hi, Amira. Anyway, I suppose I could, sure, but I don't think I would be good for offering advice because, as I said, I'm not in the industry and I don't know. I don't know where you're applying. I think the best thing to do is find out what you're applying to. So let's say you want to be a character designer for Pixar. Okay, well, search up who's already got that job. If you're not sure, search up your favorite movie on IMDb and see the credits, who's the character designer for that movie. Let's say that's the style you want, or that's the studio you want to work for. Find out who's already doing it, then go to their site and look at their portfolio, and then look at your portfolio beside their portfolio and see, like, am I close to this? And chances are, if you're starting out, you'll have to look at probably, unless you've got a lot of experience, you'll probably have to look at artists who aren't working for, like, the Pixars, maybe a smaller studio, maybe Fantasy Flight or something, and just see if your work is on par, because that's what it needs to be. When they're hiring somebody, they already have access to these other artists that are very good, and so you've got to be thinking of it this way, like, they're not going to see you as, oh, but hey, you're not as good as the professional guy we have, but you're only 19 and you're just out of school, and so that's really cool. Like, no, they're just going to hire the really good person.
Also, you said, I remember you talking about how it's easier to figure things out when you look at other people's work when they're not, like, very, very good, because you get distracted. Recall we were looking through some photos, some drawings and stuff, and it's like, oh, it's easier to see what they're doing when you're at their level.
Yeah.
They're, like, on par with you.
Yeah, but that's more for learning and less for portfolio. Because portfolio, it's like, you need to be as good as the good people.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm learning, that's another thing. But yeah, that's right. When I'm learning, I'll tend to just avoid looking at people who are so good, because I can't get much out of it. But I do tend to get things out of people who are a bit better than I am, and then I can see, like, oh, okay, so most of what they can do, I can do, but then I look at what am I missing, though? Oh, and lately, the thing I've been missing a lot has been graphic design and presentation. So I can look at people who, their painting is worse than me, their gestures are worse, a lot is worse, but their presentation's much better, their polish is much better, their design, their sense of design is much stronger than mine, and then I will learn from them. So it's not that, I think when it comes to learning, it's not about who's better or worse, because you can learn a lot from a lot of different people at different levels. It just depends what is it that they're doing well that you can learn from.
Sky Alexander asks, for learning anatomy for art, is it absolutely necessary to study and learn human bones, or can you just learn the shapes or whatever of how the body looks on the outside instead of focusing on the bones?
No, I think... What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, I think it's probably best to learn the bones and the muscles Like, you don't have to necessarily obsess over it, but just like get the basic ideas how the bone structures work and how the muscles might go over it. Because if you just go for the shapes, then you'll only be focusing on the shapes. You won't understand what's really going on beneath it, and then that lack of knowledge will show in your work.
Yeah, and not to mention, I think the skeleton is really important. It doesn't mean you have to know every bone, but you have to have a basic understanding. Because, okay, so let's say I have a basic. This is going to be more like a stick figure than anything else. I could flesh it out a bit more. So, well, I don't know if I even should, but anyway. So let's say we have a skull, right? And then we have the rib cage and a loose idea for a pelvis and a spine. And like this much is probably enough. With the forearm, it's a bit different because there's 2 bones, and this is actually important to learn the skeleton. Because otherwise it's very difficult to understand how the forearm works. But let's say this. And also, okay, so see, here, this is important, where it's called the greater trochanter, and it's where you don't need to know the name of the thing, but you need to know what it looks like and what it does. And it's this leg bone is called the femur, and you need to know how this pops out and how this is the pelvis. And then you've got an iliac crest here, so that when you draw the figure, they will be having these points, right? So you'll have this bony part which is at the surface. This knee is at the surface. There's parts of the elbow, the olecranon and stuff. It's at the surface. So you want, and especially the head, right? The skull, all this. It's really important. The eye sockets, because eyes fit within it. The jaw. It's the only part that is that moves in the face. It's really good to know this. And the other thing is, okay, let's say I'm drawing this person. Okay, they have no skin, they have no muscle or whatever. Well, because I can draw the person as a skeleton, I can add fat on it and see now it's going to be a fat person, or it could be a very skinny person. And especially with skinny people, you see a lot of the skeletal structure. It's very close to the surface if you're very lean. So it gives you so much more room to create convincing characters when you know the skeleton. At least, again, not like you don't have to be super like a doctor. You don't have to understand it that well. It's not going to hurt if you do, but just knowing enough, it's really going to make a difference. And I would suggest, take it one step at a time. Learn the skull probably first, but it's going to pay off. You don't have to do anything I'm saying, of course, but let's say you're a hobbyist, right? Fine, if you just enjoy doing the other, things without a skeleton underneath, it'll be fine if you're just a hobbyist. But if you're professional, eventually, as you progress, you're going to see people who do have this understanding, and they're going to create much better works than you do, and they're going to have that freedom that you don't have. So yes, it's annoying. Yes, it's a down payment. Yes, it's something that it's like, oh, well, learning this is going to be a bit of a chore. But once you've learned it, it's going to make your life so much easier. It's going to make your characters so much more rich. And yeah.
How can I find your brushes in Photoshop?
My brushes? I have my brushes on my website, Sycra.net, and if you scroll down, there are brushes. I think I'm using Anthony Jones's brushes, and I don't use many of them. I use a 2B pencil, a sketching brush, which is just a default Photoshop brush, and it's a 24-pixel spatter brush. And what do you think it's going to get you, though? Here's the thing. What is it going to get you to know my brushes? Is it really going to help you? Because the thing I use the most is a pen and paper, or a pencil and paper. So I don't know. I think
there was somebody who was asking what pens you used in your sketchbook. So
I use. See, here's the other thing with pens. I don't use the best pen. I don't use the pen I think is the best. I use the pen I think is the best that I know of for me, with how I work, with the paper I use, which I like to use. It's all very dependent on what you like. what is your personal preference? It can't be that someone else has said, this is a really good pen. Maybe it is, and maybe you want to try it, you know? Maybe it will be good for you. And so when people say, oh, I really like this tool or that tool, I will consider it and I'll use it. But what I've learned is most of the time when I just feel comfortable using a pen and I like using it, that's the one I tend to stick with. And I've been revisiting the same pen over and over again. For a while I was using a G pen because I was reading Bakuman and they were using G pens, and it's like, oh, I want to use a G pen. And then I just ended up going back to this, I use a Uniball UM151, I think it is.
Yeah, 151.
3.8.
0.38.
0.38, yeah, 0.38. Yeah.
Okay, so Keen Montesinos has a question about speed. I know that the more you draw, the faster and better you become. However, I would like to know how would you obtain speed if you're actively trying to get faster at drawing without compromising the quality?
I think when you don't compromise the quality and you just draw a lot, you will gain speed. But there's two angles you can go at this from. One is, because I've heard both, and I heard both work really well. So the first one is you are drawing really fast, and by doing a lot of drawing really fast, getting your ideas down, you will build accuracy. It will just come over time. You'll get more accurate because of the mileage, because of hitting points. The other way is you go super slow and be super careful, and then you do more mileage and you get so good at being careful that you start to, it's just faster. Your proportions are more accurate, and so you build speed. So either way works, but both have the same thing in common, which is that middle part, which is mileage. Mileage is super important. Now, I think the other thing is you want to be aiming for something that is sort of difficult. You want to have a high standard, that's what I mean to say. There's this piano technique where when you want to learn a piece in piano, you play super slow. Like you play each note really slow. And the thing is, what happens is your muscle memory gets this built into you build this in your head, and then you can play fast, and it's because you've done this repetitive action at a very slow rate, but you're very careful. You're trying to make it perfect. You're not going easy. And so I would say, yeah, either way works, and I've done both, and both have worked for me, so it's up to you. But mileage is super important. You cannot skip that.
Okay, so sort of connected to that. I've spent time studying while drawing in copy mode. However, I find it much easier to study something when I'm not drawing the reference. What should I do? Should I study? And I suppose he's talking about whether how connected you should be to your reference.
Yeah.
How much you should.
My opinion on this has changed quite a bit lately, and right now, and nothing I say is set in stone, so unfortunately I can't give you the answer that's like, Sycra said this, so that's what I have to do. No, because I'm growing as well, and I might be wrong about this stuff, but I'm just telling you my experience is my best advice. And for me, I would try to draw without reference as much as I can, and really see if I can remember or imagine or figure out whether it's by trying to, again, remember, or if it's just trial and error of like, does it look like this? No. Does it look like, erase, redraw, does it look like that? Or maybe not redraw, because with pen it's just draw beside it again, draw again, draw again, draw again, try and get it. And I found this is really useful. And then if I really can't solve it after all these attempts, then I will look at reference. And I found this method works very well because it trains you to be able to draw from imagination, and you're only using your reference at the end. And when you use a reference, because you've done this whole thing of drawing from imagination, you will really become aware of your problem spots. So let's say I was drawing a figure, and I kind of know how to draw the most of the legs and everything, and the body and the arms. Except I keep running into problems with the knee. Like, how does the knee look? How does the knee look in this pose? Well, if I really can't figure it out and I keep trying and I just don't get it, then when I look at the reference, I'm not going to be looking at the whole figure. I'm just going to be looking like with laser precision at that knee and like, oh, that's what it looks like. And that's going to stick with you. All these things that you do when you're really thinking very hard and it's straining your brain, you tend to level up much faster, and it's painful. But what was it, Bob? That.
Oh yeah, it's basically every time you're attempting something, that pain you feel is sort of like your brain trying to reach further into your brain. Like you're building neural pathways, basically. You know, it's sort of like, oh, your brain's trying to reach for something. It doesn't know what it is. Maybe it gets it wrong, but then it corrects itself. And in doing that, it's increasing, I don't know, I guess the capacity in your brain or something. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And basically, by doing that, you make yourself stronger. It's kind of like muscles, you know. You burn your muscles and it hurts a little bit, but you become stronger. And that's how it's a good way to approach it with that kind of mindset.
Yeah, and if on the other hand you're going straight to reference really quick, what happens is this danger that I see a lot with even very successful professional artists is they can't do stuff from imagination. You take away the reference, and all they got good at was looking at reference and copying, taking what you need. But they copy everything, right? So they're not really building. Their brain isn't at that point of straining, trying to figure it out. Like, how can I figure it out? And the thing is, if you solve it without reference, if you solve it from trial and error, that knowledge somehow, it's like you own it. Your brain really absorbs it and really remembers it. So with my pointy chin stuff, you'll notice I'm not using a lot of reference. I tend to just try and figure it out. And then when I do use reference, it's very rare, but it's very focused. So I'm not saying don't use reference for creating images, because it's good to use reference. But I'm saying when you're studying, don't be a slave to reference and try and figure out as much as you can without the reference and then use the reference. But yeah, because what's the thing? You know, if you're a professional and you need reference, I get it. You're under a deadline. It's faster that way. I understand that. But if you have the time, try not using the reference and only going to the reference as a last resort.
There's also those paintings we saw where there was reference heavily used, but the part that was not referenced was much weaker than the rest. So there's this inconsistency. It's like, how can you be so good and be so bad at the same time?
I think it's sort of like very similar to the difference between like something that's been stored short term and something that's stored long term. When you look at reference, it's like you're not really you're recording something visually, sure, but it goes away really quickly because it's like your brain's thinking, oh, this isn't that important. You're not using that much energy to really trying to store it or anything like that. So then sort of like as soon as you put it away, it's like, oh, it's gone. But if you really try something like cerebral or really trying to meticulously remember it or try to solve it, then it's like your brain's going like, oh, this is really important. You know, let's try to keep this. And then it's kind of like that. Well, for me, anyways, that's what it's like.
Because I saw Bob, you use your reference very, very loosely.
Yeah, well, like for me, it's sort of like I don't use reference as the exact thing. I sort of like I use it as it's more that I feel as though I interpret the reference more than completely use it. Like ultimately, I'm still using reference, but it's not. I don't know. I guess I'm not exactly copying it because I draw it in different viewpoints. Like I guess for example, it's like this is the wheelchair reference that I'm using, but I'm not using it in the same perspective. So like I'm changing it in my head a little bit.
So when did you start doing this? Because I suppose it takes a lot of time to flip things and.
Yeah, I suppose, but I noticed that like when I started, especially when I started drawing on the streams, it's sort of like I never directly copied anything. I just took a look at something and go like, okay, this is the idea that I have. I don't know exactly what this looks like because I don't remember it. I'm just going to search up some reference, take a quick look at it, and then I'm going to interpret it in a different viewpoint. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know when I really started this. I guess it's during the live streams. But yeah, I never really kept like just used the reference exactly as it was, I suppose.
How do you study body proportions? What do you look for? Because usually mine turn out like sometimes it's too short, or the shape is out of proportion. What do you look out for when studying? What are the key points, I suppose?
Okay. Well, when I started, the way I would really study it is the head method. So okay, so here's the top of the head, here's the bottom of the feet, halfway is the crotch, halfway are between that and the feet are the knees, and then you have, geez, I'm forgetting my proportions. Halfway down is the nipples, there's your navel, and so there's, yeah, okay, so head, nipples, navel, crotch, mid-thigh, bottom of the knees, mid-calf, bottom of the feet. So that's one way. But the other way is sort of a landmark thing, and it's that, yes, you have those measurements, but it's not the 8-head method. It's more, okay, so I have a rib cage, right? And these are things you'll have to learn and study. Maybe I can make a video on it. But anyway, you have your rib cage, and then there are things that happen with the body. Like, okay, so the ribs kind of go in, right? But if you follow this rhythm, it points to a spot. And you follow this rhythm, and it points to a spot. And that tends to be where the belly button is. There are things like the arms, right? Okay, so mid-thigh, if you cut your thigh in half, the distance in half from your thigh, it tends to be where in an open hand, if the fingers are down, they tend to end around mid-thigh, and it's understanding that. Okay, so you had this for the navel. If you draw a line across, and the figure's just standing there, tends to be where your elbow is, so that's important. And then there's other things like understanding how the body folds. So, okay, so you have an elbow here, right? And you have a shoulder here, and you have a wrist. Well, this is the same distance as this, and it's because this can fold in, right? Your arm folds and it bends in. Same thing with fingers. They have a structure, and the reason for that structure is that the finger can fold, and, I mean, try it with your own finger, right? This comes in like this, and then this goes in like this, and it creates this type of shape that, well, probably it's going to have a lot more muscle and fat, so it's not going to be that skinny. But anyway, it's because it's got a structure to it. This is where it really helps to understand structure. Things like with the head, you know that the eyes and the top of the eyebrows and the bottom of the nose, sort of that distance is the height of the ear. Now, what happens though if the head tilts, right? So if you tilt the head, the eyebrows are going to go higher, nose is going to be pushed up, and the mouth, well, it still follows roughly that idea, but it's like you're going around, and so this line is going around the form and going down. That tends to be where the ears are. So understanding either one of these two ways is, first, it's just memorizing, which is great if your figure is just standing straight, and it's also good for just developing the sense of proportions in your head. The other way is looking at landmarks, and I think this is a lot better, especially for things like figure drawing, understanding the landmarks, you know, what is something in relation to something, understanding, for instance, that, oh, what's the distance between the ribs and the pelvis? Well, you can generally fit a fist between the ribs and the pelvis. How long is from the forearm? Well, it's the same length as the foot. So it's like, oh, okay, this is equal to that. Just stuff like that. It's another way of going about doing it.
And there's another question about this while you're at it. Do you have any tips for drawing arms bent toward the body? folding and stuff.
Bent toward the body.
Well, folding, what you were talking about with the landmarks.
Well, yeah. So, well, it's exactly what I said. It's that the arm bends towards. Well, this is equal in, like, from here to here is equivalent to this, a little bit. I mean, it's close enough. And then so then your hand would be here, right? Your wrist is here, and so that's folded. I guess that's what I would keep in mind. And try it with yourself, right? Look in the mirror and bend your arm and see these landmarks, see what sort of lines up. Now this sort of changes, for instance, if you're looking on the arm and let's say it's folding, but your wrist is here and your elbow is here, and now this is going back in space. Then it's like, yeah, it's going to change slightly, but the thing that's in common is that this point, the wrist, is still the same length as this point going back. It's just, a different view, and now you're looking at it in perspective. But this, I think, takes a bit more experience drawing to be able to do these kind of poses where it's coming towards you or back in space.
There's also a question about how to draw arms and the body in profile.
In profile?
Yeah.
Well, you got your head. You got your head. You got your neck. And your neck is at an angle, right? So it's not the head here and then the neck like this. It's not how it works. Don't do that. It's the head, and there is a straight up and down line, but it's at this. It's the sternocleidomastoid, and that goes to your collarbone, and collarbone comes out to your this, and then you've got your Adam's apple, your neck part here, and then it curves back here, and then you've got the rib cage, and it's doing sort of this thing, and then you've got your pelvis, and it's doing this thing. And the way I draw the arms, I guess, is I just simplify it. I get to the shoulder. That's the first thing. And understanding this, I have a video on the shoulder, so just look at that to understand the placement of things. And then I just do lines going down and remembering those landmarks. So okay, so let's say I get a line from here to here. I know where the hand is going to be, right? Because I already set mid-thigh, roughly where the hand is if it's open and you've got your fingers out. So okay, from here to here, halfway is where the elbow is going to be. Why? Because this distance is the same as this distance, so by definition the elbow is going to be in the middle. So that's kind of how I work it, and then it's understanding anatomy. The pec muscle comes in here, this is the collarbone, and the collarbone has a shape to it. It goes like from the front view, goes like this, then it goes back, and then it goes like this. And this creates like this handlebar shape. And then you have the pec muscles here, and they connect to this part of the collarbone, and that might be exaggerated. So this section is all pec muscle part, and then you have this section, and that's the deltoid part. That's where the deltoids connect. And then you have this in-between section, which tends to be a hollow area, and you will get that little indent area that you can sort of feel where it's hollow in between here, and that's where the deltoid and the pectoralis meet. And this is why it's important to understand anatomy, because once you build this stuff, it makes a lot of sense. Like this stuff isn't that hard. It's like, okay, so what's happening here? Well, this part is coming forward, and that's this part right here, and then this part is this part, but because we're looking at the side, it's like from the front you're looking at a tube, right? And it's this way. Well, as you turn it to the side, it's going to look like that, right? And then a 3/4 would probably look something like that. So you're just taking this and you're turning it, and then you're turning it some more until it looks like that from this. And that's what's happening. These become very flat, and then you've got that middle part, which is actually visible here. Understand that the pec naturalis connects like that. So I don't know. That's a long answer.
I feel like I've gotten good at copying other drawings and drawing from real life. However, I find it hard to create my own characters. Rarely do I actually like my original drawings. Any idea why?
Why do you think?
I suppose it's because when they copy things, they have this elation that comes with like, oh, I can take some of this person's skill and claim it as my own. Whereas when you're doing your own characters, you have to start from scratch. You can't build on top of somebody else's progress. Like, for example, if I were to trace a Joe Mad drawings, whoa, I'm so cool, I did all these shapes and stuff, and when I would try to replicate it, it would look pretty lame.
Yeah. So I guess the answer to that is then build up your mileage and understand that, of course, your stuff is going to look worse. I would notice this a lot. Again, going back when I would see people in piano, and what they would do is you would have these performers, and they're really good at performing, and they would play very complicated pieces by mostly dead composers. And then as soon as it came to, because I would ask them, like, do you compose? Because I used to try to compose stuff, and I guess I still would want to someday. But anyway, they weren't that good. They were very bad. But anyway, these people just didn't compose. And when I would talk to them, like, why don't you compose? They're like, oh, because whenever I compose, it sounds bad. I would listen to the original compositions. They weren't bad at all. But the problem is they kept comparing it to this guy who was much, 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 much better. And then by contrast, they thought they were much worse. But they really weren't. Well, yeah, of course they were. But anyway, the point is, what they needed to do is understand that, yeah, you're not that good yet, but you have to keep doing it. That's how the person you admire got so good, is by doing it over and over and over again and figuring this stuff out.
But what would be the value in copying? What would you say is the value in copying other people's work?
I think you find solutions to problems. You find their way of doing things. But the problem is, if you do that, it's almost like the same thing I talked about with reference, where you get into, if you just look at the reference right away, you're into copy mode. You're into just look at this thing and just copy, 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 copy. That is easier, and it will make it look like what you're doing is like, oh, your end result looks so nice, because you're using all their solutions, but you didn't actually think. You didn't actually strain yourself. And what you're doing, if you don't use reference and you don't look at these people, is you're really making it so you are figuring out as much as you can on your own, and then the part that you don't understand, now that's a problem, you see? That's a problem you recognize. And then you go to the person that figured it out, who's like, oh, they know the answer, and you look at it and it's like, ah, that's the answer to this specific problem, because you know what the problem is. But if you didn't, and you just go straight to copying, you're just getting all the answers without even knowing what was the problem. What am I good at? What am I not good at? And by contrast, your work's going to look bad, but it's pretty unrealistic to expect that you can just look at other people and think you should be at their level. Because how? They solve problems, and you're getting the answers. At the same time, I know people who all they did is copy somebody, and they copy. They were clones of this person, and then they grew to understand their own, they found their own way of doing things. But, I don't know. For me, personally, I like to understand things. I don't just like to see the solution and go, oh, so that's how you handle it. That's how you handle it. Because what I always ask people is why. I would say, why did you do that? Instead, because there are people who say, oh, you mix these colors and it looks good, and you use these colors. And I'm like, why? Oh, use rule of thirds. Why this? Why does this work? Why doesn't that work? And so, I don't know.
And it's also the case that it's not the answer.
Yeah.
There can be more than one answer, and if you're just copying somebody else's process, you're just getting their flavor, you're just getting their everything without the background, without the base for it.
Yeah, and you're more likely to become dogmatic in your approach of like, you'll find this person does something, or maybe an artist you respect will say, like, this is the way I do it. Maybe this is the pen I use, this is the brush I use, and you start to think like, oh, this is the brush, this is the only brush, this is the best brush. When, I don't know, you may find new things if you figure stuff out on your own.
I've been doing that scribble technique where you scribble until you see something, but all I can make is female faces. How do you make crazy cool stuff like you do?
I don't make crazy cool stuff. I don't know. You must really like female faces, because what I've found this thing does, the scribble technique, is it's like looking in clouds. It's your subconscious that's finding stuff. And so what happens is, you'll notice with my speed paints too, they're not everything. It's not like I do scribbles and, hey, it's a dog. I do scribbles and, oh, now it's a house. It's like, no, they tend to be girls or sometimes monsters, but it's like there are certain themes that I will find. And it's the same with someone looking at like a Rorschach ink blot thing. You know, they're going to see things, but it's reflecting what's in their head. It's not going to just be random. So maybe you're seeing girls' faces because you really want to draw girls' faces. It's just, that's what I would think.
Would you say somebody could be at risk at getting stuck in that?
I think, yeah. Yeah, I think they would be at risk of getting stuck in it, but it really depends to me, like, how wide do you want to, what do you want to do? Because if you're someone who really wants to, you have an idea in your head and you really want to convey it, and it requires you to learn a lot of different things, then you're holding yourself back if you're being very limited. But if all you wanted to do is this very limited thing, you have a market, you have an audience, and maybe not even that, maybe it just makes you really happy, then I don't see a problem with.
I think a lot of people don't ask themselves these questions, like, why do I want to do this? What do I want to do?
Yeah.
Don't dig deeply enough. Like, what's your motivation? What's your reason for this? Where are you drawing from?
Yeah, and if you do try and answer that, you learn so much about yourself.
But it's usually painful.
It is painful.
It's like, oh, why am I drawing? Because I have to make it. Why do I have to make it? Because otherwise I'll be embarrassed. Or otherwise I'll be judged. It's not easy to deal with this. But when you don't deal with it, you end up with this directionless feeling.
I think for me, one of the things was also this case of being afraid of what does it mean. Like, what if all I like to draw are girls? Or what if all I like to draw are these shallow things?
So what if? Where did you take that question? Did you take it to her?
Well, the thing is, I have 2 sketchbooks for a reason. I don't just draw that, but I draw certain things, and then I draw these other things. And the reason I have split the 2 is because I found that, for me, given my mental condition, I take things very, when I'm very emotionally connected to something, it's very difficult to make it technical, and I wasn't improving. I would get it, so it was this case of being really invested and being almost destroyed when things didn't work for me. And when I pursue this shallow, easy, childhood type thing that, oh, I liked doing this when I was a kid, I feel better about it. I feel like I'm having fun, I'm improving, and those skills carry over into more serious stuff. But with my more serious stuff, it's like, I don't really want to show this. I don't really want to share this too much yet. Maybe at some point, but not yet. And so it's the other thing is, well, because I think these things are pretty. I think girls, in a certain way, it's like, this is not just pretty, but interesting as well.
And I think it's important to find your own drive behind why you do art, especially because it's art, because it's coming from somewhere. If you don't find this or identify it, it's like you're drawing upon, I don't know, peer pressure or very shallow things that have some force to them, but then it kind of runs out. There's only so much you can do because of peer pressure until you get depressed, until you if you're drawing upon your own joy, your own happiness for drawing, you can go on forever. You can go on, you're giving yourself, you're recharging your batteries as you work.
And there's things that you think, like for me anyway, I'm thinking that, this thing, I think it would make me happy. It's cool, I guess. But I don't feel happy, and it's like, oh. For example, let me see. So I've done these card things and they were cool, whatever. I liked them. That was fun. And they're for a Comic-Con that Bob and Flavia and I will be at in Bucharest, the Eastern European Comic-Con. This was fine. And then I started thinking, like, well, I was thinking more about, well, okay, what else is popular that I could do? Fan art, maybe. And I was like, fan art, that's interesting, sure. That sounds fun. And let me do it in my way, my style. And so I did this thing of, well, I started it. I scrapped it because I didn't like it. But it was a starting of an Oriana from League of Legends, which you know, but I don't really know. I'm not that familiar with League of Legends. In fact,
You're not familiar at all.
I don't know anything. I don't know anything about League of Legends. And so, but I thought, okay, first of all, I want to pick a character that is not, that not everyone does. Because I thought, no, not that everyone does. I wanted to pick a character that wasn't super sharp. Because I felt like that's too close to my style. I'd be able to do a good job. So I wanted to pick something more round, and then I ended up settling on this Oriana character, and it was like, okay, so I've got this character down, and I'm gonna do it in my style and look at what happens, because that's gonna be cool. And so I thought, okay, so I'm interested in this. I have a reason to do this, and then I found that it was just not fun, and I wasn't enjoying it, and I wasn't feeling good about it, and so what I realized is this thing sort of is like, let me do some chart thing, because charts. Okay, so let's say, let me make this darker and bigger. Okay. Let's say these are the things you think are cool, right? And when, let's say I'm a guy and I'm working as a fry chef. He's a fry chef, right? And maybe he hates his job. He's just doing. I can't spell. He's just doing stuff to make money, right? And then he sees this world, and it's called art, and he's like, "Whoa! I want to be part of that." Okay, so then he works really hard, and then he becomes good at drawing, right? So now it's like, okay, so now I can do. Oh, he got a bigger body. And he's sad here. He's sad, and now he's like, yay! Okay, but now within art, because he can draw, it's like, oh, maybe this is like landscapes, and this is animals. And this is portraits, and this is maybe manga, and you realize it's like, oh, out of art, which I like a hell of a lot more than anything in this fry cooking, I really like manga. So then it's like, oh, now this big thing that was acceptable becomes this thing, right? He just likes manga. And so this all the rest sort of feels the way he felt about his job as a fry chef. Because it was like fry chef, and then art, and let's say that's the spectrum of job. And before you thought like, oh, this is cool and this is lame, but now he's like, this is cool and this is lame. And then within manga, it's like, oh, but I like this style, so this is cool and this is lame and this is lame. And so it just gets smaller and smaller of what you think is cool and what you would like to do. Gets into this more narrow thing. So now I'm in this thing where I'm saying I don't want to do League of Legends fan art because I want to do my original characters. And it's very narrow. But it gets to the point that doing anything that is not what I really want to do feels painful. It feels like, well, I might as well be flipping burgers. Like, why am I doing this? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel liberating. And so it might seem stuck up, and it might feel like, oh, you already can do all this stuff. Why wouldn't you be happy doing other stuff? And it's like, because the happier, the more genuine you get, the more you find out who you really are, the harder it is to do anything that's not that. And this is what I found anyway. For me, there are people who are very comfortable in not being true to themselves. And
Hamira asks, do you have any time-saving art advice for somebody working 70 to 80 hours a week?
Stop. I know why Amira is working so hard, but just draw every day. Understand that in this crazy time when you're working so much, you can't expect to be drawing like another 3 hours on top of that. No way. Well, maybe, but I don't think that's fair or reasonable. But you can still do a little bit of drawing every day, and it's important. Think of yourself as someone who draws every day, and draw every day, even if it's a little bit. And then when you can draw more, then draw more. And you're still someone who draws every day, but you draw more. I think the worst thing you can do is to really, really do no art at all. Try your best to do a little bit, and when you can do more, do more.
There's a question. A client keeps telling me that my anatomy is off, but his understanding of anatomy is deeply flawed. It's frustrating. Should I adjust my anatomy or bail on this project? It's driving me crazy.
Oh
Yeah.
This is tough. I don't know your client, and I don't know what they're seeing in your work, and I also don't know your work. So what I would... It depends. Because what I found is usually when people have a problem with something, there's usually a reason, and I would rather take criticism from a complete layman than from someone who's in the middle stages, because a middle stage artist tends to be like a teenager in that they think they know everything. Like, oh, well, you're doing this wrong or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but it's sometimes better to just get a mainstream approach. And if they're saying something is wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong, but it means that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And think of it this way. You could take a photograph of something that exists, right? Maybe a person's holding their hand a certain way, and maybe you've seen these like
ambiguous.
These photos of like a person's like bent over and their dog is there, and so it looks like the person has a head dog head dog. Yeah.
Head dog.
Head dog. Sounds like a hedgehog, but yeah. So even a photograph can be. Of course, it's real in that this is something that existed in reality, and this is a recording of that. But it can still look wrong. So you have to ask yourself if it's that, or if it's really that, no, there's nothing wrong with this. Run this by people who you trust, or people who are just, maybe someone who's not an artist. Just ask them, like, hey, what do you think about this picture? See if they're saying the same things. Because if they're saying the same things, there may be something that is not clear with your work. Whether or not it's right, it's not clear. And so being not clear means you're kind of wrong in a way. You're not really wrong, but you're kind of wrong because you want your art to read, you want your art to communicate. It's almost like, let's say I am very verbose and I'm using big words. I have a large vocabulary. And I go to a bunch of first grade kids and I start talking about, I don't know, I talk about myriad topics and they're like, what's myriad? And it's like, it's not that my words are wrong, but I'm gearing it to the wrong audience. So that's something you don't want to do, is you have to know your audience. And if even if you're correct, it doesn't, maybe you have to adjust it. But I don't know. I don't know your situation. It's very dependent on that.
Maybe something like the client says that something's off, but they don't know exactly what's off.
Yeah.
And they might have like, oh, this doesn't read well to me. The knee is wrong, but the ankle is actually wrong, or something like that. Like, oh, this is twisted badly.
And sometimes it's that you just have to give them something else of what they want, and they'll ignore it. I watched an interview of I can't remember who it was now. I think it was an Ian McKegg interview, and he talks about how sometimes a client would say it was picking a piece and they thought it wasn't as good, but then all he did is change the hue and saturation to yellow or something. No, it's great, it's wonderful, it's perfect. And it's like, and sometimes it's that. Yeah. I feel for you. I'm sorry you have to deal with this.
What's the ideal canvas size for painting?
The ideal canvas size? I don't know. This is not a. It depends. What do you want to do? Like if I was doing a huge poster, then the canvas size has to be as big as the poster so that it'll print properly at that resolution. But it's you just don't want it so small that it doesn't look good, right? So I tend to do things that 3,000 to 5,000 pixels tends to be okay for me. If I want to turn it into anything, that seems okay. It would still work for a print, unless it's a gigantic poster. And yeah, but I don't think there's like a perfect anything.
Yeah, because you really need to put some thought into what your purpose is.
Yeah.
Where does it like for painting? What do you mean painting? Painting what for what?
Yeah.
When with what?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different answers when you ask these types of questions and they sound so general. There's a problem right there because your aim is not clear.
Yeah.
The goal is not clear. It means you need to figure it out a bit more.
Yeah.
Do you have any videos or tips for making a portfolio for universities and jobs?
No. And for universities and jobs, those are very different things. They're very different portfolios. For universities, they tend to want to see you are very broad and you have this, you're interested in a lot of different subjects. And for jobs, they don't want to see that. They want to see that you're very good at what you're applying to, whatever that position is.
Okay, you often tell us to learn our fundamentals, but can you give exercises? Like, how do we practice perspective, composition, or construction?
Well, first of all, my pointy chins thing is sort of doing this. It's showing how I figure it out, because I'm still learning my fundamentals. So this idea that I know my fundamentals, and so I don't study them, that's not true. I'm still working on perspective. It just tends to be different. Like, I work a lot more on perspective of the human body, the human figure in perspective.
Also, making the connection between the perspective that you do know and gesture and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Connecting different areas is like
exactly.
You have to relearn everything.
So right now, so you have perspective, right? Let's just say this box is in perspective, and well, it's going to a vanishing point somewhere back here. Fine, that's one part. And then I would have gesture, which is like, yeah, I'm all squiggly and cool, and I don't know. Okay, so we have our gesture and we have our perspective. But there's this thing that I'm doing now, which is gesture in perspective. So I start like, okay, yeah, we have our character. But he's also in a space, so he's cool, but maintaining gesture. And I'm not saying this is a cool pose, because it really is. But this is fundamentals as well. It's drawing fundamentals. Maybe it's more advanced, but it's like still something that is important to do. So it's like, okay, combining perspective and gesture. And how am I doing this? I'm doing it by doing it. This is almost always the answer. How do I get better at inking? By inking. How do I get better at using a tablet? By using a tablet. How do I get whatever it is that you want to get better at? Just do that thing over and over again. Eventually, you will get better at it.
It's not the easy solution people want to hear about.
Yeah.
Like it's when you hear this, because a lot of people online talk about this, a lot of painters, a lot of artists talk about this. Get your mileage down, get your practice done.
Yeah.
Get your this is what shows in your pointy chins.
Yeah.
Look how much you're drawing. Look how much you're doing. It's not. You can't go fishing for a solution. somebody to come with a magic wand and rescue you or skip your steps. Because you had to deal with that too. You wanted to skip steps. You thought, oh, I need to find shortcuts.
Yeah, because I figured I was too old, which is a common thing I hear. A lot of people will say, I don't have the time. Especially when they're like 19 and like, I don't have the time. And I understand, because I was this type of person. I was 19 and thinking I should have solved this all when I was 14 or 15. I'm way behind, and so I would think I need to find the solution. I got to find the shortcut. And all it did is postpone it. So yes, I found some solutions. Yes, I found some shortcuts. But in the end, I needed the mileage, and that's the most important thing. And the problem is, there's this thing of like steps that you want to do, and it's like, okay, step 1, learn foundations, and cool, that sounds easy. Step 2, work on your portfolio and add texture and add all these fancy effects, and then you can do your photo bashing once you've learned foundations. What they don't tend to say is that the foundations might take 2 years, 3 years,
depending
10
on
years,
how much work
depending, yeah, how much are you working? And if you work at a lot, maybe you're like Cynics and you get it in 6 months. But even then,
you still have to be Cynics, and you still have to put
and
6
not
months
just
in.
Cynics, because Cynics' foundations are good, but they're not great. Sorry, Cynics. They're not great. And there's still room to grow. There's still stuff to learn. So it's like, you got to a point, but is it good enough? Like, does it mean there's nothing more to learn? No, there's still stuff to learn. So it's this case of understanding that this is a long journey, and if you're going to skip steps, you're probably going to be in the place you like. Okay, it's going to take 2 years of foundations. I don't want to do that. Let me skip steps and figure out shortcuts and go to tutorials and watch a lot of YouTube videos. Okay, 2 years down the road, you're going to be like, I need to learn foundations, and you're not going to be that good. And it's like, oh, now if I do another 2 years, it's going to be like 4 years instead of 2 years. I could have just done it. Because you're going to have, if you really want to be good, this is going to bite you in the ass eventually if you don't do it. So I would really recommend biting the bullet and really learning about these things and drawing a lot. And okay, you might have a question, oh, but I don't even know how to use this. Well, use it. I don't know how to use this tablet. Use it. Every good question you have that you want to ask, is this a good, what if I do that? Like the question about what, I don't mean to offend you, but what canvas size is good for painting, right? If you had done a bunch of paintings, you would know that answer. You don't need to ask. You would know what works for you, why it works for you. Maybe you try like a 5,000 pixel painting and your computer is chugging. It's lagging a lot, and you realize, like, I can only handle 2,000 pixels. Okay, well, that becomes what you tend to use. You'll get very good, and you'll improve, and then as you upgrade or whatever, you can move on to a higher, a more powerful computer and do better things. But this is what it takes. It takes doing it, and that is not fun and not pretty because it doesn't feel good to be lost. And sometimes you have to be lost. You have to be like someone who just get pushed into the pool and learn to swim. It's like, this sucks. Can you just
show me the moves?
Yeah, show me
on dry land.
Show me, and I'll do it. But show me. And so just trust yourself. You actually can do it. If you
expect to fail. It's a plan for failure.
Fail a lot because failure is good. Failure is super important. Failure is what you need to do. To get these things. It's like, okay, more graphs. Okay, so let's say these are all the attempts, right? How many have I drawn? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now let's put 7 because 7's a much cooler number than 6. You can disagree with me, but you'd be wrong. So, okay, you have to fail, succeed. And then you move to the next level, and you got to fail a bunch of times. Maybe it's like this. Maybe it's random. I don't know if this is going to help more, but you've just got a bag, and it's got all these balls in it, right? And you're picking them at random, or a hat. Got a hat. No, it would be this way, right? and you've got balls, and you're picking them at random. You don't know which one is failure and which one is success. You just pick it, and then what? What have I done? Yeah, you've got a bag with balls in, and the bag is called the scrotum.
No, it's called the thing with a charcoal.
Well, moving on. Oh no. No, I don't remember what I was saying. My point was it's sort of random. It could be sort of random. Right? It could be random.
It could be random, like plan for it. Expect to fail.
Yeah,
Don't get discouraged
expect failure.
And look for
and failure is good. And when you fail, you're telling your brain, like, this is something not to do, and this is what works. This is what doesn't work, therefore these things may work, and this is what I shouldn't do. So it's good. It's good to fail. Really, if you can get this idea in your head, and you're someone who is really struggling, if I knew this, because I do this now. I do this with my pointy chin stuff. I expect to fail, and I fail a lot, and failure no longer discourages me, because I used to fail, and I would stop drawing for 2 months, or I would stop drawing for even more time. It was so dumb. If I just knew, embrace failure. It doesn't mean don't learn from your mistakes. It means when you fail, learn from your mistakes, but there is no shame in that. Understand that people are blind in the beginning, and you learn to see by stupid analogies. I've gone too far.
That's why you said that the way you would teach somebody to learn how to draw now is not the way you did it.
Yeah, absolutely. When people say, how can I draw? How can I skip things? Okay, with my pointy chins thing, all I'm doing is what I would have done anyway. Because if you look at my work, you look at my portfolio, you'll see there were realistic paintings, and there was stuff that looked, I guess, professional. People were hiring me, so yeah, it's professional, I suppose. But the thing is, like, okay, I couldn't draw things from imagination well. I needed reference. I needed, like, give me reference and I can do a decent job. And I looked at manga, or I looked at comic books, and it's like, I couldn't do that. And it started to feel like, well, those are the talented people who can do it. And then I realized, like, that's wrong. I could figure out all this other stuff. Why can't I figure out this? Because it meant I had to start, like any of you who may be beginners, I had to start in the beginning with a bunch of failures. You could see in the beginning I didn't even know a shape language. I didn't know what I wanted. And this was a different journey because I'd already learned anatomy and all this stuff. So sure, I did have a head start, and there's no denying that. But when it came to style and stuff, I was nowhere.
You're kind of relearning anatomy.
Yeah.
You're relearning pushing.
I was relearning proportions. Yeah.
Gavoyan asked on Facebook, when is it safe to say you've learned your fundamentals? Is it after reading a few Loomis, Bridgman, Hampton books, or is it when you're mastered anatomy?
Neither, Gavoyan. You can't master... First of all, I don't... Master anatomy? I don't know. Even Glenn Vilppu, I'd say he really knows his... Yeah, I'd say he's a master of anatomy. He's really old, and he does a lot of anatomy. But the thing is, like, neither of those. You don't have to master to understand fundamentals, but looking through a book does not mean you know fundamentals. Understand this. Knowing the theory doesn't mean you know it. I knew perspective in terms of theory pretty well when I was 17. I could tell you, well, I could draw it out, like, here's a vanishing point. But tell me, like, just draw it really quickly. I couldn't, because my brain hadn't absorbed that knowledge. It was more like, yes, I understand the concept, but there's two parts. One is understanding the concept. The other is, because there's more graphs. This is something that people will talk about. This is supposed to be a brain. If it doesn't look like a brain, it's because I haven't seen a brain in whatever. Anyway, so this is a brain. Is that what brains look like?
Not really. That looks like a hairy pet.
Oh no. Okay. How about this? This one, right?
Okay.
That's more like a brain,
Yeah,
and it's got a bunch of squiggles on it.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's the left side and the right side. So people talk about use the right side of the brain and use the left side, and then other people, well, now it's for a while now. It's been that the brain doesn't work that way. I know this, but this is still a very good concept. Yeah, exactly, for how the brain works. You have maybe not left and right, but I'm going to call it left and right, not because that's the way the brain works, but that this works in practice. It's like this. There are certain skills that your thinking analytical side of the brain understands. And maybe it's more like the prefrontal cortex is understanding it, and then you've got other parts. But the thing is, okay, so what you understand, let's say that's your left brain. So it's like, okay, your left brain understands it, and the way you understand it is like you read books. And it's like, cool, I get this. Yay, I understand this. Or I watch a YouTube video. It's like, cool. And then, this is a book, not him, but anyway. Anatomy.
That's Gavoian?
Yeah, that's Gavoian. Gavoian. And then, this part learns by just like muscle memory and just doing it over and over and over again. So you need to do both. First, and this one is kind of crazy, I think. It's telling you dreams and stuff. And so this is like, wait, I don't know what's going on now, but I'm just drawing with my right side of my brain and seeing what happens, because it's very different. I've practiced that I can do this now, that I can actually draw with both sides, and they're very different experiences. But anyway, this has to be translated. You need this as well as this. As well as the book, you need the muscle memory. You need this to be trained. And once this understands this, then you can do stuff. But if it's just one of these, okay, if it's just the right side of the brain that knows stuff, it's better than the left side, because you'll still be able to do stuff, you just won't know why. You won't be able to explain it. It's kind of like this guy I know who draws who draws really well. Like Bob is much more, let's just say right side, he's much more right side than I am. I'm much more left side. But what you can do is train it, so you need both. Both are important. But if you had to choose, I would choose right side for art.
But it helps when you two talk because of this different ways of understanding.
Yeah, because he can do something and I can tell him why he did it.
Yeah. I might try to explain, but it just comes out as gibberish.
But it doesn't come out as gibberish to me, because I can also do this right side thing. Like, we will speak nonsense, and you won't get anything from it.
Yeah,
we're trying to describe the feeling, and then we both sort of understand what we're saying. But for you, it's sort of like you don't know what we're saying, because we're trying to explain it through emotions instead of something that's logical.
I guess we talk kind of like hippies, and you're like a normal person, and yeah, man, that thing, man, dude, it was so rad. Yeah, I know, man.
Yeah.
How do I approach... No, when I approach figure drawing in a more technical way, my gestures tend to seem really stiff and less dynamic. How can I avoid that?
Don't avoid it. Go through it. Understand. Yeah, the more technical you get, the harder it is to maintain gesture. So what you're going to have to do is... It's what I'm doing with perspective, right? So before, I could do cool gestures, or I could do perspective. I couldn't do both. And what I eventually realized is I want to do both. I want to do good perspective and good gesture. So what I'm going to have to do is draw gesture that's not as good using perspective that's not as correct, and just suffer through this awkward period. There's going to be an awkward period. Why is there going to be an awkward period? Because by my own confession, I'm not good at this. How do you get good at something? Do it. Do it over and over and over again. So I'm understanding, okay, this is how it's gonna be. And so when it's bad, it stops scaring me that much. It's like, well, yeah, of course it's bad. It's supposed to be bad. It's okay to be bad. This is gonna happen. This is gonna be difficult. So yeah.
And there's a lot of questions about different forms of anxiety in this. Like, I bought a tablet recently, but I feel anxious starting to draw. Any tips? I think a lot of your viewers' questions come from fear.
Yeah.
They're afraid of either judgment or starting.
Yeah. What are you
failure.
afraid of? Failure? Is it failure? Is it failure? Are you afraid of failure? I don't mean to sound patronizing. I was afraid of failure for the longest time, and it kept me from improving. And first of all, here's the first thing you have to accept. Everyone fails, and the most successful people failed way more than people who aren't as successful. Because that's how you learn. You learn from failure. If you really, really understand this, you learn from failure. So if you're afraid of failing, you're not going to be learning. Or you will be learning only on one level, like the left side level, where it's like, I understand this concept. Explain it. Explain the theory. Okay, that makes sense to me, but you haven't absorbed it. It's just almost like borrowed knowledge. It's something that it's like, yeah, I see it, but I don't own it. I can't use it.
It's kind of like when I was explaining the ribbons and stuff. It was also your tablet, but still.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I can explain, I can describe it, I can assess your progress, I can tell you what's wrong, but I can't draw it for you.
Yeah. And even when you taught me about it, it's like, once I did understand it, it still didn't mean I could do it. It just means like, yeah, I get it. I get the concept, but then it's like, okay, now draw it. I felt so stupid. It's like, but how do I do this? And then it's like, well, through failure. Like, just do it over and over again. And it was painful. It was one of the most painful things I've had to learn in a while, but you eventually figure it out.
Feeling in this low position of,
I
don't know anything.
Yeah.
I know things, but I can't use them. I can't do them.
And I think one of the reasons why I guess I would keep improving is that I still feel very much like a student, but I kind of like it now. Like, that makes it fun, because it means, cool, I will keep improving. So failure is nice, and no one could make, like, if someone said something like, haha, you suck, your things suck, and you're failing, it's like, I would probably feel really sad and offended, like, oh no, I suck. But now it's sort of like, yeah, I'm failing, and what's your point? Like, so it's like, turn the fear into your ally, because there really doesn't need to be a fear of failure. Embrace it. You should really like failure, because failure is what gives you success. And so this fear thing, I get it if you feel it. I sympathize with you a lot if you have this fear that's holding you back. But if you can embrace it, it's so worth it.
What is the most efficient practice that you would recommend to every digital artist?
Again, these are very broad questions, and it's like you're looking for the magic bullet. You're looking for the thing that I'm going to tell you, hey, by the way, this is the best canvas, this is the best brush, and this is the best way of practicing. And then you can do it, and it's like, sweet, now I don't need to spend years gaining mileage. It's like, no, you still do, regardless. So I wouldn't worry about these things. And also it depends on who you are and what you're going for. If you want to be a landscape, you want to do architecture, is gesture drawing the best use of your time? I don't think so.
Is it normal to paint for ages? I've noticed many artists finish in 6 hours. I finish in 6 weeks.
Paint in stages?
No, paint for ages.
Paint for ages. You paint for ages.
I paint for ages.
So
paint,
what do you think?
And paint and paint and paint. I suppose it depends why you're painting for ages, why you're taking so long. Because if you notice that you had this burst at first and you put down a lot of information and stuff, and then you keep messing with it, it means your idea is not clear in your head, or that you've gotten sidetracked. And it's like, no, I've lost the idea. I'm putting in stuff that doesn't belong there. I'm thinking this needs to be more than it is, instead of just continuing my natural flow of things. It's really important to keep with it, because you had this in the speed paint. as well. And the last one with the
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I want to do this, and then I want to do this, and you have all this bulk of expectations. Like, this should look like this. This should just keep the original goal in mind. At the end, once you're done with it, then reassess it. But go through with it.
Yeah, and it's not that bad. Even if it takes you ages, you tend to have had, again, lots of failures.
Yeah, but it depends on what you're learning, because there's so many different levels of learning, some of which are going on without you knowing. What are you learning? Oh, this is okay, I'm just going to mess around and fiddle around and whatever, and not just meander. And
That's true. And what you practice at, you get good at. So if you practice being lost and just going to fiddle around, I guess you get good at doing that.
Yeah, it's because it becomes your comfort zone, so when faced with other failures, what are you going to run to? Just like, I'll fix this, I'll adjust this, I'll skip this, and whatever. Will you be doing any kind of realism outside of your signature chins? I like your realism stuff a lot.
Yeah. Ish. Realish.
Realish?
Realism.
Realism.
Realism. It's not super real, but...
Do you work traditionally these days? And also, can we see your work anywhere in Bucharest?
Yeah, at the convention, but I guess I should probably bring a sketchbook.
You should definitely bring a sketchbook.
But not my secret one, just the regular.
Not my secret one. You should just give him your address.
No.
I'm off to my first life drawing class. Any tips?
You may see some tips if you are drawing a male model.
How did you learn to perfect the facial features?
Perfect? I haven't perfected them.
Suppose they mean stylize it.
Stylize? By doing it? Understanding the foundations, experimenting a bunch, and then seeing what works. Oh, real quick, can we show what Bob might be doing for the convention?
Sure.
So, yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Oh.
Well, you should probably announce, tell them what convention this is about.
Oh, yeah. Bob and I and Flavia will be at the East European Comic-Con.
In May.
In May.
8th and 9th and the 10th of May.
Yeah.
In Bucharest.
Yeah.
You will be hosting a panel.
I'll be hosting a panel. Yes. Yeah. So Bob's gonna be doing these things.
Forced self-advertising.
It's terrible.
It's horrible. But
I'm glad you guys are optimistic and upbeat about this. It's terrible, Bob. It's horrible.
We don't do this life thing.
You gotta,
Yeah.
Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this will be what I'm doing. I've got pins of these faces, and if these strike your fancy, then they'll be. You can buy these.
Yeah. And you'll probably sell them after anyway, right? We'll see if you can do it online or something.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. But for now. Yeah. Anyway. Cool. That's cool, Bob. That's really great.
I tend to fear working digitally. I know that I don't have a lot of limits in that medium, but I don't feel comfortable with the tablet feel yet. Any advice?
Do you know what I'm going to say?
What are you going to say?
Just do it! You don't feel comfortable. You got to get used to it. It took me a while to get used to the tablet. So. I think pretty soon everyone's going to know what I'm going to say. Just draw.
You're just going to be that brand. Just do it.
Just do it?
Yeah.
Nike?
Yeah. Can you show us how to draw an Indian Asian character? I wish there were more of them in comics and cartoons.
You draw me.
You're just going to pose for 30 minutes now, right?
You see a lot of people who is, Indians are different. Asians, there's a lot of types, but my nose is a little bit different than the ones I see.
Just do your features and what they are. Why they are Indian.
Well, it's not
do
Indian.
the super sweet, sorry.
Okay. So I can't draw an Indian face because what does that mean? There's lots of different people in the world.
Exactly.
Black hair, and well, let me just draw me. Okay, so I have pretty thick eyebrows, and I have almost no forehead, and my head comes down like this, and then I have very sunken in eyes, it's all dark here, and then my nose goes like that, kind of, and like from the side. I used to think it went like this, but it doesn't. It's like, well, used to. This is probably many, many years ago. It doesn't. It does this. Jesus. But like, sort of, it's more rounded at this. But yeah, it does that sort of thing. Anyway, and then we got lips, and sort of, I usually have like sort of
lips.
stubble. And
Indian people have lips. Listen.
well, it's not just Indian people. And yeah, sort of this, and then hair, and sort of big ears, and then my eyes are usually mad, because I don't know, I look pretty angry all the time. A lot of people say this anyway when they meet me. So if you meet me and I look intimidating, it's not real.
You're probably just happy about something.
No, that's Bob.
What?
And then, yeah, and bags and
Yeah,
whatever.
so if you want to draw an Indian, they should draw you, and if they want to draw an Asian, just draw Bob.
Yeah, draw Bob if you want to draw an Asian. And then my ears. And the ears I only know how to draw are really my own, because I learned how to draw by looking at myself a lot in the mirror, so I guess a lot of the features translate. Although the nose is, I'm feeling like that's not quite accurate. I'm not that good at it, but whatever. And this is something that Cynics really should learn, because he's drawn me so many times and he keeps getting it wrong. And yeah, the lips are not accurate either, but whatever. And now I have a double chin.
Put a tutorial out just for Cynics.
Yeah,
How to
Cynics.
draw you.
Cynics, this is for you. This is more what I look like, and he draws me with like a freaking mustache this big, and he's like, I don't know what does Sycra look like.
It's how he draws it.
First of all, he draws everybody with squinty eyes, like really small eyes. Whatever, I guess that's what it looks like. Who cares? Oh, sorry, that's my Cynics impression. What am I doing?
You are doing a stream.
Right, I'm doing a stream.
How does the animation flower sack helps the artist?
The animation flower sack?
Yeah, I suppose the
Bob!
Yeah, I think that's
Bob, show them how a flower sack is cool.
Yeah.
You mean like draw a flower sack?
Show them why it's
How
cool.
you
Like,
use
what? How do you use it, and why is it great? Why is it so? Because Bob's way better at this than I am.
Like, what do you mean by the flowers? Do you mean the shape or the animation?
Well, okay. What was the question again?
How does the animation flower sack help the artist?
Yeah. How does it help the artist?
Well, if you're talking about animation, the flower sack, it's like, I remember doing this exercise in school where basically, like, we drew a flower sack and it's like, it was either jumping or it was like being dropped. And basically, you were just trying to understand weight and how it distributes through the flower, in this case, the flower sack. So it's, okay, how does it stretch, how does it squash? And then you just get a feeling of how it would move and the weight of it, and then it's just like, okay, now you carry that over to all the other
What's
stuff.
the difference? What's the difference between a flower sack that's like, let's say it's jumping and one is squashed? Can you draw those two versions?
Sure. Like, if it's squashed, where it's just like, if it's just lying around, this is it. This is the resting area, and then the weight is just sort of like down over here. It's not really doing anything. If it's dropping, however, then it's like there's every material stretches when it's like being thrown or it's being dropped. So maybe it's like it would just be like this, you know, and then it's just like, oh, it's in the air and it's like really stretched. And then if it was like normal, it'd be like this. And then it's yeah, it's just like and when it lands, the squash would be something like this. It's just sort of like all the weight just comes down on it at once. And then yeah, I don't know. That's my bad explanation of the flour sack, I suppose.
No, it's a good explanation, and it sort of replicates a torso, the way a torso moves.
Well, it's kind of like okay, here's the rib cage, and then here's the waist and stuff like that, and it's just like it kind of has that shape, and then sort of like where it bends is also where the like that would be your stomach or your waist area or something. So it's like that. So I guess you could also apply it to anatomy because it is like the human body is kind of like that.
Yeah.
Sydney Gray asks, can you show me how to draw your attention to my comments? Well, Sydney, he's not reading your comments. I am. So if you want to draw attention, I guess you'll need to, because there's so many comments that I have to peruse while I'm also feeding him the email questions and the Facebook questions. So I guess your best bet is write something that's pretty thought out, because those tend to be longer, and I can make more sense of it. If I just see a 3-letter question, it's like I'm likely to skip it because it's very general, it's very vague. So there's that. I have trouble drawing hair with a flow to it, and especially with painting hair.
Okay. Well, the way to get a flow is sort of understand physics and stuff, and try to use more flowy lines, right? So hair has a natural flow to it. Look at hair. And it has a flow to it. It's very light, right? Like hair is a thing, and it tends to function in terms of like clumps of things. So for me, I draw very crazy hair, and so what I'll do when I'm dealing with the flow is I'll draw like really flowy lines and gesture to that hair, and then I sort of detail that out and understand. Okay, so how does this? It's very messy. How does this break down? Let's say I draw the flow first, right? So those are all the flow lines, and then what I can do is really think of the structure. So there's a top of the head, and the hair sort of does this type of thing, and it's going down, and like now this has a flow to it, right? Because I initially thought of the flow. It's the same as gesture drawing. You get the big gesture down, and then you break it up, and in this case, it's like crazy hair, so it's got more to it, more flow to it.
Cynic's joined. He asked me what's the worst thing about living with me.
What's the worst thing about living with me? I don't know. What is it?
Pretty fun living with you. Sorry to disappoint, Cynics.
Yeah. Sorry, Cynics. I hope I didn't offend you with my tutorial of how to draw me. We got, what, 20 minutes left?
Sure.
Yeah, roughly 20 minutes.
Sure.
20 minutes. Again, I'm sorry if I don't get to all the questions.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. I'm trying to keep up with them. Can you give me advice on breaking a bad art habit? I draw really small figures, but when I draw bigger, I lose my proportions.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in another stream, but just flick your eyes up and down and try drawing a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, and you will sort of carry it over. I still have this issue where it's easier to draw smaller. It is. It's just because you're seeing the whole figure. So what you want to do when you draw bigger is maintain that ability to see the whole figure. And so when I say you flick your eyes up and down, what I'm saying is you look at the top of the head, look at the bottom of the feet, and you try and flick your eyes up and down until you're seeing it as if it was one image, or maybe step away from your image. But I think this is a better way. And eventually, through mileage, again, it took me years and years and years to get this, so it's not like it's super easy. It shouldn't be that long for you. It shouldn't be years and years and years. It should just be maybe a year. But just doing it over and over again will really help and paying a lot of attention to this will help.
Mm. I know you said you don't like the looks of too polished things, but I just don't understand how you can live without definition. You never have a real point where the body ends and the background starts, but when you're sketching in your notebook, every person has all the lines of, okay, here's the arm, and here's the face, and here's the leg. They're curious as to why you don't work with that when you're not taking a sketch and painting it.
Why I don't flesh every single thing out?
Yeah, because your painting approach is very, very different from your sketchbook approach. And your sketchbook approach is pretty different from your workflow when you work.
Well, with my sketchbook, it is more about me learning. And when I'm painting, it's a much more free, again, my right side of my brain or whatever, it's working much more. And I don't like definition because I like things to be open to interpretation. I've always preferred sketches to a finished product. I like seeing the energy behind things. It doesn't mean I don't think polish has a place or rendered stuff has a place. It's just not my personal taste. What I'm drawn to is more rough things, and so if what you like is really polished, that's cool. You know, that's your thing. That's what you should strive to do, and try and refine things and make everything very crystal clear. But for me, I'm really quite comfortable with things being ambiguous, things falling into shadow and whatever. It's fine. I'm much more interested in the general mood. If there's an emotion, if I'm getting across a feeling, and not necessarily the story. I like story in writing, but in art, I'm much more interested in just a feeling. Like, what does this make you feel? Does this make you feel a sense of, and then whatever the feeling is. And if it does, cool, you're done. You don't need, like, oh, is fleshing out this finger and making it all realistic going to make my feeling of anticipation any stronger? Usually it's like, no, or whatever feeling I want. If I want something to look dynamic and cool and energetic, and there's all these sweeping lines, it's like, okay, is turning those forceful lines to more fleshed out, clean, polished lines, is that going to help or hurt? It's actually going to help if what I want is dynamism. But if what I want is just a very structural, realistic drawing, then yeah, of course, being more polished is going to help, right? So it depends what you want, what you're looking for.
Do you have any tips for drawing mouths and how to add expressions to them?
Yeah, I do. I do have tips for drawing mouths. The first tip, pretty much everyone says the same thing. Do not outline them like this. This is usually what you don't want to do.
Unless you're Bob and you want to prove a point.
Wow. Oh! Yeah, unless you're Bob. But, I mean, I can do this and get it to work, but it's because I kind of know what I'm doing. So the first thing is understand that the transition in lips, be it this top transition or this bottom, tends not to be a harsh line. If you compare it to other lines in the face, it's usually not that well defined, except often in photographs it looks more defined than it really is because of the contrast and stuff. So I would say, you know, focus more on the darker areas. And if I just erase this down a bit, so there's where the lips positioned, and I go to a darker area. It tends to get dark here in the corner of the mouth, dark here, and then sometimes it gets darker here, like in the between the what do you call this? This part, like just below it, tends to get darker. And so you can use these broken lines. And if you've seen anime, they sometimes do lips like this, where they just have these areas, because this is the area that actually feels darker. In this area where the lips touch, the value actually gets a lot lighter. It gets much lighter. So that's one thing. And then the other thing in terms of expressions, first, it's understanding lips are very, you can move them quite a bit. So I tend to draw faces that have like the lips very very mobile, probably more than is realistic, but there's that. And then with mouths, the other thing that's super important is to understand the skull and understand you have a jaw. And this part, all this part, doesn't move, and doesn't move, and it is this part that moves, this bottom part. It's a very weak jaw. But anyway, it's this part that moves. So this is going to move, and then understand that, yeah, because it moves, the teeth here are going to stay, like if you looked at this in the front view, right, the teeth are going to be visible like that. Let's say that's an open mouth. And then this, look what's happening to the teeth. Like here, right? These are the teeth. That goes down, so you would see inside the mouth on that view. And understanding stuff like that is really going to help. Understanding how sort of the teeth flow, what parts of it you're going to see, and stuff like that. It's really important. None of this fundamental stuff with anatomy, and it's not a waste. It shouldn't be something that you can't apply right away. It should be applicable.
Okay, so a bunch of people want to know, what are your thoughts on using drugs to boost creativity?
Never have, so I don't have any thoughts on it.
No? Okay, so would you do a hangout with fans? I remember we watched the Level Up one, and it was like,
Yeah, it's very risky, and the reason is that you don't know what you're gonna get, and you don't want to make people left out, but then at the same time, you don't want to use, like, I don't want to take for granted my viewers. And for me personally, it's taken a long time just to be able to talk. And I remember when I first started, I was like really, really nervous. And this tends to happen when it's your first time talking. And so I'm afraid of that, like a little bit, where I don't want my viewers to just be sort of listening to someone who they're having a lot of fun, or maybe not even fun, but it's nice for one person, but it's not so great for the other people. But at the same time, I'm not completely opposed to the idea, so if it can work, I would, but right now, at this moment, I'm not exactly sure how to make it work, how to make it very inclusive, and without going through some kind of screening process.
It's also the pace of the hangout would be very hard to maintain. Like, it's hard to keep a rhythm when it's like, oh, my microphone's not working, this isn't working.
Exactly.
We had to start an hour early just to get everything working, just to get everybody. Oh, I can hear. And it's just 3 people. And
we didn't need to just start an hour early though. We spent like hours getting this prep, getting things to work, setting up things, and
we've done it before.
Troubleshooting. It's really, that's a really good point. It's not that simple in terms of like, oh, cool, meet with fans. It's like, yeah, meet with fans who haven't installed the right plugin. It's like there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong.
And that's also, I don't know. I don't know if I would be able to be, because I get pretty nervous. So Bob is like, we've been talking for months and months and months together. So comfortable. Really.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of reference is best for understanding color palettes and getting them right?
I don't use reference for color palettes. I just experimented a bunch of times and looked at it, like what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of times you have ideas like, what if I did this? And then you try it. And then it's like, okay, so that's what happens. Well, what if I did this? And then you try it. Oh, that's what that looks like. Okay, well, what if I did this? And it sounds like stupid, but if you do that, you get so much better than someone who, again, looking at the answers, right? You get the answers handed to you. And again, I'm sorry if this really sucks, and that I suppose I would be much more of a popular channel if what I said was like, oh, just do it this way and it'll be great. Because I could just give you tried and true methods, and these will work. But what I really want to do is help people improve as artists as much as they can, and give people the knowledge I wish I had. And what I wanted is not just to be able to find stuff that worked, but to have the knowledge and to be able to use it however I wanted. So maybe I'll do a tutorial that's just like, these color palettes tend to work. This tends to look good. Just do it this way, and you'll get a good image.
Because you wanted to do the super long one.
I was gonna do the super long color tutorial where I just tell you everything I know about color. And then the reason that I had trouble doing it is because it kept going into things of like, so I'd be like, oh, just make sure you pay attention to the local color. Oh, wait, what if they don't know what local color is? Okay, now I need to explain local color. And it's like, each time it's like, oh, you're going around the color wheel and you're going warm and cool. Oh, what if they don't know what warm and cool is? Oh, now I got to explain color temperature. And saturation, what if they don't know what saturation is? Yeah, and it would be this, it's this thing of like, that wouldn't be a few hours. It would be, it's kind of weird, but I'm pretty old, I guess. Not super old, but I'm starting to get white hairs in my beard. You can't see them, but they're there. And so there's this thing of like, you're kind of surprised by how much you actually know when you're forced to make a tutorial. Or don't know. Sometimes you're surprised by like, I really don't know what I'm doing. But when it came to color, I was like, oh no, I know too much, and this is going to take way too long to do. Maybe I'll make a course somewhere. Maybe I don't know, do one of those Udemy things. I don't know. Maybe.
How more comprehensive, like define your terms.
Yeah, because I don't want to just bore people who are not interested. There's a lot of people just watch the videos for quick information, coming and have this like, oh, this is a cool technique I learned that's very effective. Sure, but again, a lot of the stuff I talk about, it's difficult to translate. Like, oh, here, use an RGB color slider. What is that? Oh, red, green, blue. How do you do that? Oh, yeah, this is a long thing. This can take a while to learn. Because a lot of the stuff, it took me like a week to learn, and then I'm just telling you, oh, do this, and it might take a minute to explain it, but without that week of practicing it over and over, it's not going to make much sense to you.
If you have an idea for a project but you don't consider your skill level high enough to execute it to a satisfactory standard, would you save the idea for later or just use it to improve?
I think it's not bad to use it to improve. I think that's good. I would say do what you can do in terms of the project and keep working towards doing that. For instance, in the project I'm doing right now, I don't think I'm good enough. But I can write, I can put down the ideas, I can develop what I can, and so, yeah, do what you can. And even if you try to do it, even if you can't do it just yet, but you try, you'll get better anyway. You'll be closer to doing that thing than if you don't do it. Like, oh, I want to make a comic book, but I'm not ready. Well, okay, so make a comic book. Oh, but I'm not ready. No, but the way you get ready is to make a comic book, not make a comic book.
Yeah. I mean, you had this thing with the cards when starting out. Like, oh, yeah. Wait, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I can do this. And I still, it's true that you might not be that satisfied. You might feel like this isn't good enough.
Isn't that an incentive to go back and do it better? Go back.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question from an absolute beginner here. How can I learn from my mistakes if I don't know where I'm wrong? Will copying another artist or drawing from references for the sake of learning help?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good idea. Put your work on a forum as well. I think that's really good to have a second pair of eyes. If you can, become part of an artistic community. When I was starting out, conceptart.org was pretty big. There was Sijin, there's other forums. I have my own forum now, the Sycra.net forums, which has a lot of cool people who are very helpful. And so that would be my idea, is try finding other artists who can give you advice, who can say things like, you're really weak in this area. You could work on this.
Not just that. I don't know if that in itself is enough. I think you need to internalize all this stuff. Like, look at the things you like and look at the things that you don't like. If needed, write it on paper. What do you hate about your own? Like, if you hate your own drawing, why do you hate it? What about it do you hate it? Make a list, break it down, and analyze it. And that's how you learn. Because when we were talking about this, I told you, nobody tells you how to learn how to look. Like, if you're not passionate about this to be like, if you don't realize that you need to know how to look, this is a technique as well. You need to know where to look. You need to learn how to analyze your own stuff. You need to know why things are wrong.
Mhm.
What about them is wrong to be able to fix them. Like
Yeah.
you were doing with Bumsky, and it's like, explain why you're doing this. Why you like this. What about it do you like? It's
Yeah.
like sometimes you're like, I don't know. And with Bob, it's like, why did you do the things you did?
I don't know.
Okay, so I love art, I love animation, I hate backgrounds. Please help me. I don't know how to background except like abstract or out of focus stuff.
I'm not the best for this because I really don't enjoy doing backgrounds.
I suppose Bob would be
Yeah,
more.
Bob.
So they're saying that they don't understand how to do backgrounds, like
They can only do the abstract stuff, so.
So maybe it's just that you don't understand perspective, or do they like? It's like if they don't understand perspective, then they just need to practice perspective. You know, like draw things in perspective. Maybe look at backgrounds and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or leading to that, like maybe you have problems with your visual library, in which case maybe you just need to like look at things and try to keep them in your mind and stuff like that. I don't know. That one's a difficult one. Yeah.
How do you
just
figure
like practice,
when you
like,
do
just
these,
practice.
like for example, these suggestions or even the storyboards? How do you figure out what frame you're gonna pick from your entire?
For me, it's sort of like I have two ways of going about it, or maybe even three. It just depends. But it's like one. It's like okay, let's say I'm doing a storyboard, and then these characters are doing something, and then they're in an environment, and then it's like okay, if they're dancing, let's say a Victorian-style ballroom. Then it's sort of like, okay, I have an idea of that. I'm going to draw with the vague idea, and then it's like if I'm lacking in something, I just look up reference of Victorian ballrooms or stuff like that, and then I just put them into an environment that's like that. Like that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is just sort of like I imagine the scene in my mind, and then what I see in there I put on the page. Yeah.
So you imagine it's background included.
Yeah, I imagine it with background included, and if it's not enough, then I'll look up some reference.
Mm-hmm. And there's a question for you, Bob. How do you deal with your colors in your drawings? I mean, I love to paint and draw in black and white, but I feel lazy when I do. Do you feel the same?
Well, I'm not exactly the best in colors either. Like how I go about it is that I don't know. I just did it. It's just like I just went about doing it, and then it's just like okay, I learned. Like I had help from Sycra, of course, but I learned through trial and error. I learned that it's like colors. Like yeah, okay, they have their role to play, but values are the most important thing. Like knowing what's lighter, what's darker, what each material, like how dark each material is, what type, like the material. What type of material affects how the light bounces off and stuff like that? Man, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not the best person to ask when it comes to colors.
I remember when I was trying to teach you colors, so and you would just show me the stuff you just did. It wasn't bad. Like you had this strong
intuition.
Well,
he's very intuitive.
Yeah,
when he does it, he doesn't know why
exactly.
he does it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why it makes it's so difficult to explain the stuff that I do.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, you had convinced yourself you were bad at color. You thought I don't know color, but it's like no, you are pretty good with color. You just don't do it enough. That's all. It's not like sometimes thinking that you're bad is just a self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't worry about bad or good. It's a judgment. Just do it.
I would say that's the best way of approaching it. Just sort of like tackle the subject, and then through experimentation and trial and error, you will start figuring things out. Just view it as a science experiment. It's like okay, this is your lab. Find out which process works and which doesn't, and then eventually you will find the answer, or at least the answer that will work for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got. No, actually, we don't even have any time, so maybe we do one more question, and then what we can do is take some of the questions we didn't get to answer, and in the next stream, we might start with those.
You can repost them in the comments, because the comments are going to get fleshed.
Yeah, so what happens is, this really sucks, but after I end the Hangout, the chat is going to, all the comments are going to disappear, and then it's just going to be blank.
You have to take the video down and then put it up again. And
there's a way of getting it, which is to make the video private, and then you can copy all the comments, but then you can't see the video because it's private, and then paste the comments. But what would be better is if your comment didn't get answered, your question didn't get answered. First of all, I'm sorry I didn't get to it, but if you could leave it in the chat, like after the chat disappears, leave the comment again, leave the question again. We'll take those and use them as the beginning questions of the next one. So you could see in the beginning, we were actually answering questions from Facebook because I announced the stream a bit in advance, and I left
of your videos.
Yeah,
I looked through them.
Yeah, in the previous
videos. It would be really
videos.
helpful to have them on the stream comments.
Yeah, because it's very difficult when you're in the stream. The comments are just like, first of all, they tend to stop for a while, and then they'll just flood in. It's like get a whole bunch of comments all at once. It's like, well, what do we look at? What do we look at? So yeah, leave your questions in the chat after the stream ends, and then we'll.
Not in the chat. In the comment section.
In the comment section.
Because the chat is going to get
The chat's going to be disappeared. Yeah. It's gone. Yeah. But, yeah, so one more question then?
Yeah, you were going to talk about the emails you get about promoting a channel.
Right. Okay, so this is a question that's not really a question, but I get a lot of emails and Facebook messages from people who are starting new channels, and they ask me, how do I go about doing, or can you promote my channel? It's usually one of two things. One is, can you promote my channel? Please give me a shout out, and it would mean a lot to me. And the other is, how do I get as big as you? What is the secret to getting a YouTube channel? Because, I don't know, maybe they think, oh, I have this big audience, and how do I do that? And my answer is always the same, and it's, I didn't think about this at all. I did not plan to have a big YouTube channel. All I wanted to do is help people, help artists get better. And I did this since 2006, and I've been doing it a lot. So I don't know how many videos I have, but it's probably over 300 or something. So it's something that you just keep doing it. And it's without reward. Don't expect any reward. I would say, I don't know, maybe I know people who do this to get popular and they're successful. They're very clever and they're very business minded. I'm not this, so you would do well to ask them. Because all this marketing stuff, I don't know. But it's not from.
Talk about Comic-Con. I'm gonna be doing
Yeah. But my advice to get to where I got is, don't look for being popular. If this is your goal, you're probably doing the wrong thing. And I recently came across this channel that was doing it right, and so I wanted to give a shout out to this person.
You came across.
Well, I didn't come across it. Flavia told me about this channel that she found. She's like, well, this person's doing it. And the thing is, this channel has, how many subscribers? Has 8,402 subscribers, which isn't bad, but it's like not that high. And yet, look at how many videos there are. It's like tons of videos, and
yeah, she's super consistent, and she does a lot of critiques.
Super consistent, and a bunch of critiques.
And long, and like she will stream for what, hours and hours?
Well,
like
there's
2 hours,
probably
1 hour.
more. I don't know why it's not loading, but like, okay, so you started 3 years ago. And maybe your critiques are not that good at that time, or it's pretty good. But the idea is you're doing this for the right reason. And when I see people do this, this is what makes me. And this person's name is Istebrak, Istebrak. And when I see this, it's like, oh, I want to promote you. Why? Because you didn't. First of all, you didn't ask me. You didn't. It's usually a bad idea to ask someone, hey, can you promote me? Because I had this feeling when I wanted to create my channel of, I just want to help people. And when I see that in other people, I respond to them. It resonates with me. It's like, cool, you want this. And if you're not that good, but you keep doing it, because when I started, I was really, really bad. Or in my view, I was really, really bad, and I've improved a lot. Let's just put it that way. I've improved a lot since I first started. And I also get this comment of, how do I join your streams? And sometimes people will reply to this comment and they'll say, oh, the way you have to draw is you have to be really good, because he doesn't ask people on who are good, who aren't good. Sorry. And that's not true, because there are a lot of people who are good that don't get asked on. And sometimes it's not because of that, it's because like Flavia is really nervous or I just felt like super streams were too much. But for instance, I would have Jet on or Cynics on or guys like this, and the reason I had them on is because they were doing this stuff. They were doing videos, and I tend to look at videos and it's like, oh, what are you doing? And it's the same as when I'll look at someone's art. If they send me something and it's a message and they're like, oh, this is my first drawing, can you give me a critique? I'm likely to be like, yeah, I don't know, it's your first drawing. But if they send me a message and it's like, can you give me a critique? I've been working on this stuff, and I look and it's just pages and pages. They've done like so much work. They've been at it for years. It's like, wow, this person's put in all this already. That shows me that, hey, they really want to improve. And so it's those people that I tend to invite on because they're trying to help people. They genuinely want this, not for the fame, not because it's like, oh, I want to be big, but because it's like, even if you're not big, you're doing this anyway, and for some years, and that really makes me smile and wanna help them. So yeah, I'm gonna shout out again. This is the Brack person because they do really cool tutorials and they're really long and stuff, and yeah, it's nice. Nice to see that.
It's nice that she takes the time to go through, because I noticed she does this. She does it on live streams, and then she goes through everybody's stuff, and it's like,
yeah,
she's learning along with it, as you said. But it's also like she's considerate.
Yeah, and like guys like Will Terrell, like I have him on as well, and it's because he doesn't have to do this. It's not for the money. It's for this thing of like, you feel like you want to give back. And that's to me, that's a good reason to do something. And money or fame is like, I don't know. I don't really care about that stuff. But anyway, thank you so much. First of all, thanks, Bob.
No problem.
And your drawings are disturbing as always. And thank you, Flavia.
We are in the same room.
We are in the same room.
It's not shopped. It's like I can actually.
Yeah. And we're not the same person. Sound the same.
You're just very good at animating.
And you're not siblings.
Yeah, we're not siblings.
Yeah, we're very much alike.
So the Sisterwives thing is a joke because in the last stream everyone was saying, oh.
Yeah, now they're saying like, oh, this is an actual thing and it's like in a patriarchal culture and whatever. They're super butthurt about it.
What?
I
Why?
don't know, they kind of answered themselves at one point, but it's like, oh, Sisterwives, this is an actual thing. They were Googling it, and what is this?
It's a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing.
What is it?
I
don't know what Sisterwives is. If you are mad at me, I didn't do it. I didn't know. They were just saying, oh, it's like my sister wife, and I'm like, oh, my sister wife. So is Bob my sister wife as well? It's the stream of my sister wives. What the heck? But yeah, thank you so much for coming to you. You, even if you're watching later.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's like, it's getting better for me.
So I did thank you, right, Flavia?
You did, I guess.
Yeah? Yeah, good.
I suppose.
Okay. All right. Yep. See you.
You should
Bye.
thank Cynics too.
Thanks, Cynics too.
Because he's almost catching up to Gavoyan in terms of comments.
He's replying to comments?
Oh my God! He's like, no, he's spamming.
Oh.
Blah blah blah.
Blah blah blah. We'll have Cynics on. Okay. So yeah, you just have to make you feel more comfortable with him first.
A lot of lube.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.